I hear Bert.
Hello. Cheek here.
I hear Bert.
Bert's at City Hall with us.
Okay, what about, is Keller there?
No.
I heard him just check in. I saw it on the phone.
Do we have Gene Keller on?
Hello. Hello.
Okay.
Who do we have calling from the number ending in 3472?
That's Cheek.
Oh,
Mike.
okay. Hey, Mike.
Yep.
All right, we've got a quorum. Anybody, has everybody had an opportunity to read the previous month's meeting?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I make a motion, we approve.
All right, I have a motion to approve. I have a second.
Yes.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, sounds like they all said aye. Building
Guys,
is
Gene Keller. Please say your name before you make a motion, or that way I'll know who to put down on these. Okay?
all right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
That's Gene down there.
This is Gene Keller. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Gene.
All right, we had a motion and a second to approve the previous month's meeting, and we had all in favor. Next item of business is the building inspector's report.
Yes, you all should have had that in your packet. Like I said, we had 4 permits since the last meeting, and the year-to-date summary is on there as well, if you have any questions.
Is there any difference? John, is there a difference in the signage for Food City? Is there, or was this based upon our discussion from 2 months ago?
What are you referring to, Jim?
Well, we've got two approvals here for signage for Food City, the build out and the signage.
Yes, so there was a couple different permits for Food City. Food City, the build itself, Food City signage, and then there's a separate space that's leased inside of Food City. Tennessee Valley Federal Credit Union will be leasing that spot, and so they pulled a permit to build out, which you can see there is a little over 42,000 to finish their part of the building, and they pulled a separate permit for their signage that Food City had not permitted. So,
All right, this is Jim Abbott
Yeah.
again. Remember, we had quite a bit of discussion on the signage. Did they agree to go with what we had recommended?
yeah, I think they done that at the meeting, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
This is Garwood. The only point that wasn't clarified at that meeting was what bank or whatever kind of lending institution was gonna be in there. And this is clearing that up. Was it gonna be,
Tennessee Valley?
TVA's? Yeah, Tennessee Valley.
Yeah. All right, any other old business? Well, then on to new business. Angela Davidson? Is that our new person?
No. Guys, give you a heads up. This first on the agenda is Angela Davidson and Corey Dobbins. They requested to be part of this meeting. They wanted to speak in favor of some changes to the backyard chicken ordinance. Obviously, we don't have an in-person meeting, so this was the best option to choose for them. So they're on the agenda so they can have a voice in the, since they can't be here in person.
And they're wanting to voice into what, John?
Their opinion on backyard chickens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The number 2 under new business.
Well, let's go ahead and open the discussion to backyard chickens. Are they online or however this is called?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Angela Davidson. I was born and raised in Sweetwater, Tennessee. My husband and I are trying to purchase a house preferably in Etowah, because my husband is an educator who is hopefully transferring to McMinn County Schools this year. We believe the 2017 yard hen ordinance should be updated, and I'd like to quickly highlight some common arguments against yard hens, and then give you my thoughts, if that's okay. Space. Many young people want to have yard hens, but under the current law in Etowah, the average homeowner who has 1 acre or less is restricted from getting them. Although experts say that a relatively small lot is actually sufficient for yard hens, and that's 4 square feet per hen in the coop plus 10 per hen in the run is the numbers that are
Where are you
given
getting,
by
excuse me,
experts.
my name's Jim Abbott. Where are you getting those numbers from?
Let me see if I wrote down my source. I think it was called, I wish I wrote it down. I have it on my phone. May I email you my source? I think it is like chickencoops.com or something very generic sounding like that. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to get back to the screen. Can you still hear me and see me?
We can hear you, we can't see you.
Can you come here? My husband's Corey Dobbins. He's present at the meeting. He's just with the 1-year-old right now in the yard. So she's having a little bit of a hard time. I have 2 small children.
Okay. But don't worry about where you get your information from. We can go ahead and consider that, but go ahead and continue your discussion with it.
Okay, and I can email it to you if you'd like. I didn't write down my sources on these current notes that I'm looking at. So the second argument that I've heard a lot is property value. And I disagree that having yard hens hurts property values, because some of the most expensive and exclusive communities in the US allow small flocks, including New York, Portland, Chicago, and Boulder. Even our own Tellico Village allows small flocks with a permit. In my mind, as somebody who's looking for a house, for my first house, to purchase my first house, when I see gardens and chickens in a community, I see abundance and I see growth in the community. And I think that's something that's very fitting for the city of Etowah. The third argument I've heard is noise, and chickens are actually very quiet animals. Roosters, of course, would need to be restricted in city limits, but chickens are, on average, are much more quiet than dogs are. And the last argument that I hear commonly against yard hens is waste. And for those of you who are worried that chickens produce too much waste, here's some perspective. The average dog produces 1 pound of waste per day, and the average hen produces about 1.5 ounces of waste per day. So that's about 8 to 9 chickens producing the same amount of waste per day as 1 dog, which I think makes the argument for chickens being a waste issue obsolete. Those are all of my notes. Thank you for listening to my thoughts on yard hens, and I really think that the benefits outweigh the drawbacks.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for her?
No, I thought she covered her points pretty well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. You can go ahead and sign off now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, let's open it up for the commissioners now to talk about our chickens and the backyard chickens. Who else wants to speak?
This is Gene Keller. We keep talking about the size of the cage. How are we going to how are we gonna make sure that that happens? Are we gonna have to have a permit process so that codes enforcement knows where the chickens are at and can verify that the coop is the correct size? And that there's no, roosters, they kind of sort themselves out. I'm hearing roosters at my house still in the morning, so, but how do you verify that the space is adequate for these birds?
City Hall, do you have any comment? John, do you have any comment?
I mean, it's just like anything else, you know, what we face with our animal control. It's something that is hard to enforce, to a T with the resources we have. And we've seen that with animal control, you know, with the animal registration and things like that. And I feel like that may be a challenge we run into. You know.
Well, we dropped
Animal control.
We dropped the tag, we dropped the license character feature now, so so we dropped it on dogs and cats, or dogs, but what are we gonna do about chickens? Not gonna do anything with chickens? I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that these birds, that they recommend a certain minimum size, this would be a little easier to solve, but I just don't understand. I don't know how we're going to work around this square footage requirement.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if the best option is to, obviously we can't, there's people that do it now, and they were being caught in the past by animal control and being forced to get rid of the chickens. You know, moving forward, if it's something we do, you know, obviously unless you do permit it, which is hard to do, it's essentially, it would be like our animal control now is complaint based. You know, if somebody complains about, you know, a neighbor complains on them, it could be investigated to see if, you know, if they're doing everything to code or not. Or if we drive through somewhere and we see something and we see a concern of our own, it could be investigated. But it would, you know, I don't think it necessarily has to be something that's permitted per use. But like I said, that's up to you all. It would be a struggle resource-wise for the city anyways.
I think the city has better things to do than monitor the size of coops.
Agree.
Exactly.
And I think John's right. It would be a complaint kind of issue. I think there are some guidelines that we could establish, and you know, if there is a complaint and the person meets the guidelines, then that's the end of the complaint. If they don't, then we could issue them a citation for being in violation of the guidelines. But there
So what you're saying is handled on a case-by-case basis?
Yes, and you know, if we get a complaint, but I think there's some things.
Yeah.
Tim Alsop and myself went and met with Dr. Fraser, and you know, we assumed this was coming from the school, and actually it's coming from the 4-H. And I have attempted to get a hold of the 4-H person. The school had some guidelines that were put out from, I think, Alabama, which were not really restrictive, but very informative. And, you know, it talks about how many square feet you need at certain age for chickens, and also where you can have them. And it's not side yards, front yards, it's backyards, which is what the thing discussed. I know the one person that we know that's got them is Mr. Wilson, and he's got them in the side yard. And those are some things that I think we need to talk about as far as issues in the shelter and protection and things like that. If we give it to people, and we can't give it, you know, we can't say, well, then other citizens are not allowed to have chickens.
I'm okay with the chicken thing. I just want to make sure that we're not, you know, that the chickens that there's adequate space for the birds.
Yeah.
And if you recall, what was submitted by Mr. Wilson was 1 square foot per hen for the hen house, 2 square foot per bird for fenced enclosure. She is suggesting her research, Angela, that's 4 square foot in hen house and 10 square foot per bird in the fenced enclosure. So that's a pretty dramatic difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 square foot is about the size of a sheet of paper. That sounds awful confining.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this Alabama study was recommending 12 square feet for 6 weeks, and this is talking about no more than 6 chickens. 25 square feet for 12 weeks of age, and then 50 square feet at 20 weeks of age. And it's talking about 6 chickens.
I think we're splitting hairs too much. I think we're splitting hairs a little bit too much. We go in there and put the maximum amount of chickens, pick your number, 6. I'm gonna just say 6 right off the bat, all right? That should be 6 times 4 is 24 square feet. If there's anything less than 24 square feet for the number of chickens, or if the square feet is not enough for the amount of chickens they got in there, and we can put a top on the chicken, on the map, so we'll just say 6. So if they got 6 chickens, that's all they can have. They got 8, they gotta get rid of 2. And we go 4 square feet, that's just 24 square feet. That's a fair little landing area. And you can build a little coop, you can put 2 little animals on the thing and move it around your yard so you can keep the poop cleaned up. These again farmers out there have got all that stuff. And then if you make it any more fine-tuned than that, then we're gonna have problems, I think.
Well, so how many birds are you recommending we limit? 6?
I'd say at least, I would have 6. I'd say 6 on a residential lot, and 6 times 4,
24.
24 foot.
But is that for the coop square footage, or is that for a run square
You
footage?
can have for the coop square footage,
Okay.
and then a run would be some proportion
Would
of
be
the
the
amount.
10.
60 square foot.
So it'd be 10 square foot for a run.
10 square foot for a run, and then
24 for the coop?
Well, that means the run
With the
will
li-
be smaller than the coop.
No, it means the run would be 60 square foot where the coop would be 24.
Oh, you're saying
Oh.
10 square feet per chick?
Per chicken?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And
That sounds reasonable to
And
me.
then, the other question would be, it was mentioned by Mr. Wilson about allowing them to basically be free out of a coop or a run during the day. We had a lot of problems with that a few years ago with them running loose.
I don't see how that's workable.
I don't either. People are gonna be
I've
running.
seen. I was out in the country. And this boy had a whole thing made as one, and the coop and the run, and he had wheels out there on the front edge of it, and he had 2 handles back in the back. He picked that son gun up, and he rolled it from one spot to another spot, so he could clean up the spot that he had just left. I mean, pretty easy done. It's all lightweight chicken.
Yep.
That might be, something like that.
Well, I like our quantity. This thing that came out from the 4-H club talked about the whole purpose was to teach children how to raise animals, sell animals, make money, and its number was 6. And we go with
That's probably a good number.
yeah, and that's a good number. And then 6 and then the square footage that Bert's 6 feet with 6 by 4 square feet for that. Yeah.
24 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the run was 10 foot per bird.
Yeah. Anyone else have a comment?
I like 10.
I do too.
10 for the run, 10 per bird.
Now, I
Yes,
like
yes,
10
10
birds.
per.
That's 10, 40, and 100. It's pretty simple. What happens if there's 2 kids in this 4-H program?
Well, they share the chicks.
Okay.
3 and 3.
Yeah,
Yeah, 3 and 3.
I don't think it's just for 4-H, excuse me. I don't think it's just for 4-H.
Well, no, I know. I'm just saying. I just use that for example.
Okay. The other thing is waste disposal, and I don't know how our new garbage collectors feel about picking up chicken poop unless they're going to recycle it or whatever they want to do.
I don't
Tina,
think
you-
they're gonna mind.
Yeah, as long as it's in a bag.
I don't,
Collective
well,
use.
the way they're running to load that truck, I don't think they care.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, you gotta think it's the same, if you look at it from the dog standpoint, people have dogs in the city and they have to manage the waste from the animals there. We already have ordinances in place for enclosures to be kept clean. That would apply to this as well. And it'd be up to them to dispose of it properly,
Yeah.
just like dogs or anything else that we currently have, so.
There you are. There you are.
Okay.
All right.
I feel a consensus.
Okay, do you, of course, we can get, Chad, I guess, to come up with the verbiage, but what we're talking is 6 chickens, 4 feet per chick in the coop, 10 feet per chick in the run.
Yeah.
And, you know, how the person keeps it, whether the waters, the feeders, the thermostat, and heat lamps, and all that other stuff's gonna be up to them.
Thermostat?
Put that in.
How cold a chick gets. This, and no roosters, you know,
No roosters.
just laying hens, no new chicks.
No,
I think
No
the
other
current-
no other fowl.
Correct.
Yeah.
No geese, no ducks, no.
Now, another thing, do we want to make it just backyards, or do we want to let them have it in side yards also?
well, backyards as much as possible. And some people don't have any backyards, quite frankly, or very little, but preferably in the backyard.
Any other comment?
Oh, the 4-H people were encouraging to sell the eggs. Our current ordinance forbids sale. Are we gonna scrap this one and,
Forbid sale?
we're gonna scrap the one that forbids sale and just leave it out?
Chuck, the primary purpose on the 4-H is that they have 6 baby chickens. And then after they're grown, they take 3 of them to an auction and profit from that. That's part of their school experience. And they
okay.
and they keep 3. And then I'm not sure what they do with those.
Are they selling eggs?
That did not come up in our discussion with
Dr.
the
Frazier.
school.
Yeah, I'm sure they can, or use them to eat, you know.
There's nothing in 810 about selling.
Anyway, I think we ought to start with this right here and go from there and refine it if we need to from there.
As far as the selling issue, Bert,
Pardon me?
as far as selling them, will they sell their chicks or sell their eggs?
I don't see it.
I know, I see they're gonna, it's a 4-H thing, I think they follow their directives as far as
Okay.
that would be. However, whatever that is. Of course, I missed that meeting, of course, and I profusely apologize, and I missed the damn meeting. Okay, I'll take it.
I don't think it ever came up, did it, Mr. Abbott?
No, it did not. It did not.
I would look at it as almost like our local produce type ordinance where, local farmers can sell produce with no permits or anything. I sort of look at it in the same aspect as that, I guess.
With that being said, I've had several people ask me, and we used to have a little farmer's market, and from what I understood, there's no parking. It's there in the parking in the depot or whatever. Has anybody considered the old gravel parking lot below the Scout Lodge that belongs to Morgan building as a farmer's market type thing? And you'd have plenty of parking.
Not that I'm aware
Well,
of.
we had actually started looking at a way to do a farmer's market again, and then COVID hit, so it's kind of all been pushed back until we have a little more clarity on things.
Okay.
You're talking about where the old playground for the junior high school.
Yes.
People don't know that.
Now, that's owned by the,
Now.
that lot's owned by the fellow that is in the old
Owns
manufacturing.
Morgan.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
I know we have to get permission from him when we have our parade to stage there, so I don't know how.
Right. Yeah, I know there would be something there with it, but that's just a good spot. That would be
It is.
sort of the center of town if he would go for it.
I noticed that he's not having trucks parked there anymore, and I'm not sure the reason for that.
Well, we find out about that.
Yeah.
That's something we check on pretty easy, I imagine.
All right, so let me. And I'm not,
city manager and the sister's got personal touch, reach out to.
Yeah.
let's go ahead and put a motion. Burke, if you would state your motion on chickens in the backyard, and if Chad's there, would Chad work out the verbiage to go with it? 'Cause all we have to do is modify this 18.
All right, help. I appreciate any help here. Six chickens, 24 square feet, with a 10-foot run.
Per chicken.
Per chicken in the backyard.
4 square foot for
4 square foot per
coop.
coop.
For the
chicken.
We have
For the coop.
we have a second on that motion.
That's good.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll make a second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, none opposed. So that's the basics of the chicken in the backyard.
Chicken in the backyard. Chicken.
Yeah, and then the other issues, if they come up, we'll talk about them then.
Yeah.
This still goes to the city commission for final approval, right?
Yes. Now, Chad, I assumed you would be agreeable to make that modification in our ordinance. Is that correct?
Yeah, Ashley and I can work on that, and I made some notes of what you said, but to be clear, did you say 4 square feet per chicken?
Per coop. For the
Per
coop.
coop.
Per coop, and 10 for the run.
And no more than 6 chickens.
16 anniversary prohibited.
Yeah. All other factors.
Chicken lives matter.
Well, just think how much better we're gonna make Etowah according to that.
Yeah. Along with gardens. All right, let's, the next item on the agenda is upstairs apartments and downtown buildings.
John, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so in our C1 district, C1 and C2, if you look under uses permitted, section B,
Yeah.
it's number 23, accessory apartment for the proprietor where said person and his or her immediate family reside on the premises of the office or retail store. As you all know, it's not something in years past that's we've ever had the resources, the licensure to really enforce on the fire code side. Moving forward, I want to make it clear, number one, that we are for, I am for making it to where people can rent these out, because it's currently happening. I'm sure you all know there's several of these places that have apartments made into them. But as the fire department gets ready to start going through, we're going to be running into issues because, and if I go with them, we have a zoning ordinance that doesn't allow that at this point. I think we've sort of touched on this in the past. And what we've run into is, you know, if you have an ordinance that allows it, you know, there's the off-street parking requirements and all that, that we don't have the resources, or they may not have the resources to provide. What we're trying to navigate is how to do what's best for our downtown and the business owners, property owners there now, regardless of whether it's allowed in zoning or not. There's still fire codes and codes that are applicable to these buildings, you know, the safety, life safety issues that we're going to have to address regardless. We're not about kicking people out of their homes. We're not trying to discourage anybody from being here. We just need to get codes, us, you all in the commission, all on the same page, moving forward. So, I mean, it's open for discussion. Chad may have some better input on, or Ashley, on the best way to move forward with this. But that's sort of where we stand right now. We had one more recently, which I know Jim and Gene, I know y'all are aware of at least, and Bert, with Miss Kim Burns' building. Currently, right now, she resides upstairs. She's the proprietor of her business downstairs. So that is the code. There's also another apartment up there that she rents out and has a tenant. As I said, this has never been enforced. To say, we've had this in '97, it passed, it was amended or added, I guess. I'm not sure what the reason was then. Before, I guess it was sort of unregulated. There was no, yes, you couldn't, or no, you can't. So moving forward, we need to try to find the best way to do what's best for our downtown, what's best for the city, and these business owners. Obviously, I don't want to speak for Adam, but from my standpoint is I'm for it as long as they are meeting code and meeting the life safety issues that we've run into, as far as the big things, you know, their means of egress and things like that that are lacking right now in some of these places. So.
Yeah, I'm all for it as well. That'll give some of these business owners the opportunity to make, you know, secondary money by renting these apartments out. But like John said, you know, the life safety issues are the number one concern of ours.
Is this
some
fire
of them are,
Is this the fire chief talking?
yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Adam Hafley, I'm the fire chief.
Okay.
How many apartments are there that, do you know? Not in just this one building that we talked about, but in all the buildings?
And some of it is a little bit of an unknown just because we've not been in some of these buildings at this point. As you know, over the last year or two, we've started getting inspectors with the fire department that are state licensed now. And so legally, when we go in, used to it was more of a, correct me if I'm wrong, it was more of a pre-planning in case there was an emergency, knowing what was there. But not having the licensure, there wasn't a way to actually enforce anything legally. So moving forward, that's something they're going to be doing, and these are roadblocks and issues we're going to run into when we get into these buildings. I think it's a good thing to find a way to make it happen because it gives these business owners or these property owners a reason to invest money in their buildings, you know, because they can recoup that money.
Right.
And sort of justify renovating maybe the whole building because they can make their mortgage or more just in their tenants alone, and it'd be profitable for them to have a business downstairs, you know. So long-term goals, I think this is the best first step in the right direction for downtown, but figuring out a way to navigate the legalities of it is what we've got to do now.
Excuse
Do you know
me.
how many buildings?
This is Jim Abbott. One of the things that we did, I think it was last year, that this issue about apartments came up, or maybe the year before. And we maintained that they had to have at least 500 square feet. I think, is that correct? Also, do you remember?
That sounds
Actually,
right.
we actually made this change back in 2014 to the zoning code.
Yeah.
And we allowed apartments in the rear and on the second floors of the downtown commercial buildings in the central business district.
It's never hit our code.
It's never been updated in our codes then. The last thing I showed was in '97 when it was added as number 23, like in the C1.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the current zoning ordinance.
It's under
Where?
special exceptions, in the one that I'm looking at, so they do have to come to the planning commission, and have that reviewed before they get a permit. But, it's in the C1. I don't think it's in C2, but, no, it's not in the C2, but in C1 it's allowed with certain restrictions and getting permission from planning commission.
Again, that's what happened.
You can do and say what you want, but what we need to do, I think, is that if they want to build out an apartment or two upstairs in their building, then that's going to be an open. I mean, it's an open building. They're going to build an apartment. Okay, they're going to put up 3 walls or 4 walls, depending on how they're going to build it. But they've got open access. They go in and get plumbing. They go in and get their wiring. And if that, then if they've got a fire escape of some sort, just like most of our buildings downtown, the highest one's 2 stories. If they got a rope ladder, they throw out a window, or if they got a rope ladder, they can throw out the back window onto the other part of the building that's not storied, and then down to the ground. All I want to do is have a chance to get out. I mean, really, because if you go in and you start trying to say, okay, well, this building doesn't meet code because it's got aluminum wiring in it, I don't think I could afford it up at that house to rewire mine, or I'd have to take out a loan to. So, and I don't think they can afford it either. You'd have more in your building just trying to do one thing, and that'd be rewiring. But if you can do it in piece and parcel, if you're gonna build apartments, then you can redo your wire.
Could I get some clarification here, this Chuck? I'm looking at the ordinance that's put in here on uses permitted as special exceptions in Part C.
Mm-hmm.
And this okays residential units, upper floors, rear of any structure, and has requirements for that. Is that not still in effect?
Put 2 off-street parking spaces.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things, it allows it. Obviously, 23 says the person that runs the business can live there. There is a special exceptions down here, and there's those other things in there like off-street parking requirements and things like that. And a lot of these buildings, there's not that. It would be up to the property owner to acquire that from another local piece of property. Obviously, we have street parking, but you don't want to designate your street parking for that, because then your businesses have nowhere for people to park. And we've got free parking across the road, but obviously if all these people done that, your entire free parking lot would be full of tenants, so I don't know what the best way to move past that is.
I don't think you're gonna have that many. I mean, I don't think you're gonna have very many more than what you got right now. She's got herself and another guy living in those apartments. There was one right back up here between 6th and 7th Street. There was a guy and his wife and a kid or two up there for a while.
Well, wasn't there one on 9th Street in 411?
Yeah, that's the one of our that we think will be one of our more concerned things when we get to it, just because I think there's like 5 in it, and currently right now there's one way in, one way out. And,
right.
I mean, that's things that we can address when we get to them, but you know, it's already in here. I mean, they've got to meet code. That's not the issue. I guess the issue is, you know,
How hard are you gonna start and when you gonna start? How hard are you gonna go on these?
Well, you know, like if they're not doing any renovation, if somebody buys a building, obviously they don't have to, there's things you have to have and things you don't have to do if you don't, like say, remodel. You know, the two means of egress, which is 2 ways in and 2 ways out, that's there. You know, I mean, they have to do that regardless of if they're doing any renovations or not, finding a way to make that happen, whether it's a fire escape ladder or, you know, what it may be. Like the last one, that's what's happening here on 8th Street. The guy's buying it, and he's already met with myself and Adam, and so he's got a plan in place that we would, you know, it's meeting code, and he's going to have emergency escape and all that. So,
so we can work things out.
Yeah.
Shouldn't,
So-
if they do.
When
it-
you,
I'm sorry, I guess somebody else.
when Brooke was mentioning the wiring, I don't know if he knows it's aluminum or not, or if he's just using that as an example. But if you're borrowing money, if you're going out for a mortgage on one of these old buildings, doesn't the bank require a certain level of correctness in the building? Doesn't the mortgage company say, no, we're not going to lend you money on a house with aluminum wiring, you got to replace the wiring? Or
Well,
do
that
they say,
depends on the type of financing that the buyer would go through.
okay,
This is Jim Abbott.
So-
Shouldn't it be the same process as if you're building a home? You've got sign-offs from electrical and gas and sewer, and shouldn't it be the same sign-offs if you're doing an apartment?
if they do a remodel, yes, you know, we can. On
if they do a remodel, but
Yeah.
if I'm buying a new house, it doesn't matter, there's too many examples, but I'm just wondering if the mortgage companies are going to kind of ones that draw the line in the sand and say, here's what you will do. Same way with the insurance companies.
Well, they definitely can, but at that point, if the purchaser is not willing to put that kind of money into it, the deal will just fall apart. It's not going to go any further. This
So the
greatly
mortgage
comes.
company. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, sir.
Go ahead.
This comes down to basically the fact that we're not really talking about wiring. We're talking about that these apartments aren't meeting the 2 parking space requirement is one of our issues. And the other is if someone purchases a building and then wants to remodel to make additional apartments, that they are going to have to be subject to part of the life safety code.
So if they buy the building, they cannot make any changes to it until they get in there, until they're in compliance with the latest codes.
Well, not
Any changes have to,
not minor changes, but if they remodel beyond a certain point, then that's when fire and codes are obligated to address the life safety issue.
do you have a definition of what's major? Is putting in a doorway major?
No.
No, I don't think so. Most of these, if you go from like 8th Street going south to 9th Street, I know that we have looked at those, because of the setbacks on all the property, it's zero issue to be able to get a secondary means of egress. And some actually have them. Like we noticed a couple of them go out onto a back porch, but the porch doesn't have any stairs to get down them. That's just some minor changes. But some of these buildings take up almost square feet of the lot that it sits on. There's where you're gonna have a little bit of issues, but a lot of things can be worked around.
Okay. In your opinion, what's the worst that one of these might have to do?
I mean, worst case scenario.
Yeah, is there one that stands out that's gonna need the most corrective work?
Yeah, so let's take the building there sort of towards the corner of 9th and Tennessee.
Sure.
I don't know if y'all are familiar, but to access some of the apartments, there is a little wooden door on the street side.
On Tennessee Avenue.
On Tennessee Avenue, on the side of the building, and it's maybe a 30 or 32 inch hallway or gap between the buildings. You go down the walkway and there's an alcove with porches and things in there, and there's like, I think 3 to 5 apartments inside that alcove that go into the building. We've not been in the building. It appears there's only one way in, one way out.
No, it goes up to the back. Those are a back. It's funny that you put that back. There's steps inside that go upstairs to the apartments, and then you have your entrance, regular entrance from the front.
Yeah. And in a situation like that, like I said, there may be. We've not got to go in there. That's just from the outside looking in. But the worst case scenario on something like that would be if there's not a way to do 2 means of egress, say there wasn't any windows in a particular small apartment or something, the worst case is probably the code says 2 means of egress or a sprinkled building. Obviously, it's not very cost effective sometimes to do that, to retrofit a building to sprinkle it, but if it's enough revenue base to justify it, that's an option for them, you know, I mean, so they have more than one option, if you get what I'm saying.
So in that case, they'd either put in sprinklers or put in another stairway so that you would have two ways to go in or get out.
Yes, that's correct.
Exactly.
And now, even the business owner, they need to have a secondary means of egress.
There's no way to
at minimum. You know, we're not coming in here saying that they have to sprinkle this. A lot of, if you look in the code, a lot of problems are alleviated with fire sprinklers, but obviously, like John was saying, it's can be it cannot be cost effective in some instances.
the property owner.
Do we know whether there is anybody living in this apartment or apartments on 9th and 10th?
We haven't been in there for sure, but I mean, there is, facing, 9th Street, there is some, window air conditioner units. A couple of those are running, and then a few aren't. So we have to assume that at least 2 of those are rented out.
The last time I was aware of anybody there, I saw them being arrested. Well, I wasn't sure whether anybody was there or not.
I couldn't tell you 100% whether they are currently occupied. But I know just, traveling up and down Tennessee Avenue, I have seen people coming in and out of that doorway.
Is something that we can't get around, pretty much. But this is like not a big deal.
Who's talking?
Well, just a discussion here.
2 kids in the plate, Ben.
We need to have someone.
The mayor and I were discussing the requirement for the designated parking spots.
When we last discussed this apartment, and I think it was dealing with Kim's place down on 8th Street, we talked about the ability to park in the back, that lot that's in the back. I do remember that, and we talked about how many sites they need for how many apartments they have. And I guess that was in 2014. Is that right, Chad?
Yes, sir.
God, my time goes fast.
And I know back when we originally talked about that, we had wanted people to designate when they did a sketch plan of where these parking spaces would be, because that was the concern at the time, that they would end up on the city street. So we had talked about it being in private lots, so they would secure an easement or a lease from another property owner, or if they had property behind their building where they could park. We also wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to interfere with people utilizing the backs of these buildings for loading and unloading zones too.
All right, I do remember that.
Any of those lots, people own.
And then like they were talking about on the ingress and egress, that was the other main issue that we had talked about back then. And I think we solved that by saying that it had to meet the requirements of the International Building Code. So that kind of dictated what they could do in that building. If you couldn't get a second means of access, then you'd have to sprinkle the building. And if they couldn't do either, then it just wouldn't be practical.
Okay. But, okay.
Was this that amendment that was done in 2014,
Yes.
Chad?
Yes, and it's, yes.
So you guys have the clarity you need now?
That should make code for the fire department, shouldn't it, John? Adam?
It will, yeah. Well, the fire department ensures, regardless of what this zoning code says, if the fire department shows up and there's 5 units, they're going to inspect it and say, and make sure that the egress and things are there regardless of what our zoning code says.
Right.
Where it becomes an issue on that is my problem as, you know, the code side is, you know, whether they're acting accordingly to our zoning code. I think the biggest thing for having this here is making it clear. I know we had some discussion with Kim, with you all, and making sure y'all are the understanding and know where we stand on it and how we're addressing it. And basically letting you all know that we are behind this. There's just things that we have to do liability-wise to make sure the code is being followed. And so there is going to be probably issues that come up, and we're going to have complaints, you know, moving forward. But knowing that we're pretty much going to be starting enforcing this code when we get into it, so that's already here.
Well, it appears your experience that you've dealt with it very well. You know, give people adequate time to conform.
This is Jim Abbott. John, won't we run into the same problem that you have with rental houses? If they already have apartments there, you're not allowed access to them unless you get permission from them to enter, right?
Exactly. So, you know, the way we checked with some other municipalities, and so on these commercial buildings that have residential upstairs, at any time the fire department can access the common areas. If annually they wish to inspect the residential units, we have to go through the same process as the landlord does, as getting with the landlord, providing notice, as the landlord provides notice of inspection. And so there's a process to it. We can't just go in somebody's house.
Right.
So there's a process to it that we would go through when we get to that point. So.
Well, I think one of the issues is we don't know how many apartments are downtown, do we?
We really don't. I mean, we don't. We know the capability is there in a lot of these. And we want to make clear moving forward that it is okay. There's things you'll have to do. It benefits the property owner more than anything because it makes it more profitable for them to do this, you know. So, like I said, one of the bigger issues is the designated parking, which is not a life safety issue or anything, but it's something that we may be forced to address at some point because we start getting complaints from property owners if more of these people start in these buildings and more tenants get in these buildings. You know, and it is on the property owner to secure those parking areas, but it's something that may have to be enforced as well.
So we've been kicking this around for about 30 minutes, and I don't feel like we're making much progress. We're getting some answers, but we're not getting a solution. So if we don't do anything, what happens? Because I don't see why we have a clear alternative.
I think the next steps are that we notify the landlord that we want to inspect the department, I guess, and John.
Okay,
inspection.
I understand. I understand, but that doesn't change 8th or 9th in Tennessee. I mean, even if we had all the other information about all the other rental units that are in all the other buildings, we're still stuck with this problem. Not stuck, that's a poor choice of words. We still have this problem with 9th in Tennessee.
They're gonna
Well,
either,
that can't be clarified until we get in there.
Yeah, until we really get in the building, there's sort of, on that particular building, there's not the clarity we want. So moving forward, you know, we will be starting the inspection process through the fire department, and I'll be, as they go out, I'll be going with them in the downtown district where the residences are gonna be involved, or possibly involved. And so, just know that we are doing what we are required to do. We're working our best with the property owners to rectify the issues and, ultimately make it safe and let them allow them to do these things. So, like I said, our code pretty much addresses it.
The parking is just gonna be something you can't really verify. There's
Yeah.
not a way to do that.
It's gonna be hard to
They may
verify.
not ever
these,
use
yeah.
it, or they may,
Yeah.
it may boom and they use
Use
it,
all the
then
time.
you guys are gonna have to be.
We'll have to push them toward the parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got the clarity you needed on the spaces and the parking spots. So at this point, you've advised them that you all are gonna start this process.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much the goal of this, am I correct?
Make sure we're all on the same page and y'all understand us, moving forward, what we're doing and why we're doing it. And like I said, anybody that sat down and talked with me and Adam, including the guy that's buying Ken Burns' building, can speak for us. We are behind them and support them, from our side and the city. They're just, it's an educational thing, explaining to them the codes and the processes, and even the buildings that's been redone, such as Kirby Noodle and things, when they done theirs, they've been great to work with. Most of these people that are coming in, they understand, but they're in situations like this, you may get kicked back from, some of these current property owners that are trying to sell, and, it's coming up as an issue because the new guy's gonna have to do some things that should have already been done, but has never been enforced and wasn't done. So, obviously, some of the current property owners may get upset when we're saying, well, you've gotta do this, this, and this, so.
That's when you negotiate a price and split the difference.
Exactly.
Sure, that was one of the things that we were looking at is, if you plan on buying this building for $100,000 and you've got a $125,000 budget and it was going to cost you $130,000 or $135,000, we just wanted some of these people to know up front what would be expected. And
Sure.
A lot of the people that are purchasing these properties, they are the ones that are coming forward and saying, hey, what can I do, or what do I need to do, and have been very pleasant to work with.
That's good. That's encouraging.
This is Jim Abbott. Let me ask you a question. I mean, whatever these apartments, and we really don't know the extent of them until you guys get through your survey, but they've either got to have a sprinkler system or 2 egresses or to the apartment, and that's by what, the building code? So
International Fire Code.
Okay, so if the apartment on 9th and Tennessee Avenue doesn't have either sprinklers or 2 accesses, then they don't have much of an option. They do one or the other, or they don't leave, right?
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we
And
don't
I think-
know that they don't have a second access.
Right.
Right, we don't know, and we won't know until after they go through. And I think that sort of answers Gene's question. He said, what are we gonna do? After they make this survey, that's when we find out how we're gonna react.
Yeah, sure. And what we'll try to do is, as we do these, the issues that come up, we will try to include these in a report to you all, with the building inspector's report. And, so you're aware of what's going on, what we've done, the business owners we've dealt with, our property owners, and, So along the way, we'll try our best to keep you all informed. And if y'all don't have, y'all can call mine or Adam's work sales anytime. If something comes up and you need some clarity on something, if a citizen or a property owner comes to you, just give us a call. We can try to clarify things or.
So John, would you use the potential for subdividing a second floor room as one of the reasons to contact a owner? Could you go to the owner and say, hey, we're here to do an inspection, and by the way, we may have some recommendations for you if you're interested in subdividing this second floor. We can help you with that.
We can definitely advise them of that, and let them know their options to make their building more profitable and
sure.
Things they could do to their building, and
rather than them. Go ahead.
The biggest thing that we need to do with these, what we're running into right now is like this property owner, this guy that was going to buy this property, he was unaware of things he was going to have to do. He did the right thing by coming to us and checking first. Had he not done that with the information he was given by Miss Burns, it would have been a sticker shock, because he would have put all his money up, and then we would have come in and said, well, she didn't disclose that, because and she didn't know. It's not her,
Yeah.
So
up front, let's be honest. The code is not easy to follow.
Yeah. So educating the property owners now of issues and moving forward, it gives them some obligation to disclose this information to sellers or buyers, and it's a good thing for the property. If it needs to be,
it's going to make their building more marketable.
Yeah.
I mean, when they can show that they're in compliance with whatever the latest international fire code is, I mean, good grief.
Yeah, I mean, just
that's got to be
above Miss Burns's building, you could put essentially probably 4 apartments up there. There's 2 now.
Wow.
And still be the code. So it's profitable if they do it. So we'll keep y'all updated along the way, and should y'all have any questions, you can contact us.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else have, Mike Cheek, I see your name pop up down here under microphone several times. Did you have some comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay. If we can, let me ask Chad a question here. When, and we've done this under the BZA, when somebody asks for, to modify either offsets or something, that they get approval from their next door neighbor. Under our chickens in the backyard, if they want them, put them in the side yard, should they not get approval from their next door neighbor?
If you wrote it into the ordinance that they would require a variance in order to put it in the side yard, then you would have to notify the neighbors.
How do you guys feel about that?
I think it's worth exploring that idea.
I don't know that I would want my neighbor to ask me if they were putting chickens next to my yard.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'd mention about that too, it looked to me like if we amended that ordinance 810, that would be to your municipal code, which means it wouldn't be fall under the zoning ordinance, so that variance wouldn't have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. So that might be where we need to put a provision in the zoning ordinance as well.
Okay.
Take care of that, Chad.
Like I said, they're not clean. They're not easy to understand.
Yeah. All right. Is there any other items up for discussion?
Please, God, no.
All right. Obviously, there's no other persons having been before the commission because can't see anybody. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned.
Have a good night, everybody.
You too.
Thank
Good night.
Thank you.